Hi students, it's Dr. Marks, and now that you've watched the movie Beautiful Boxer, we're going to talk a little bit about that movie and move on to talk about third gender and legal issues in Thailand. Hopefully you saw the tagline from that movie, he fights like a man so he can become a woman. And again, the story of Beautiful Boxer, you followed the history of the main character through youth to his sexual reassignment surgery. It's a form of kickboxing, as you saw, with punches, you're using your knees, you're kicking, you're using your elbows, right? Anything goes. And even wrestling holds are considered legal in Muay Thai boxing style. The origins of this come from ancient Chinese and Indian hand-to-hand combat techniques, and it's really the national sport of Thailand. One year we actually did go to the famous Lumpini Stadium, which we saw in the movie, and watched Muay Thai boxing matches. And it was a little bit sad because they start as really young kids, and we watched this really young kid get, just nailed, and they carried him off. He wasn't even conscious. It was a little crazy. But Thais go there to watch lots and lots of sporting events. But we see a modern version of this that's become very popular in the West, and that is the MMA, the mixed martial arts, and the UFC challenges, the Ultimate Fighting Championship. And so that's kind of a form of Muay Thai. The main character, as you saw in the movie, is Prenya, but more commonly known or more popularly known as Nong Toom. But if you remember, in the very first scene, somebody's walking in and saying, "Is Prenya working tonight?" Well, that's because that is her name. And she was born June 9th in 1981. So you can think about what that means. Her age would be right now. And she's from Chiang Mai. Chiang Mai is in northern Thailand. And we talked a little bit about this area when we talked about the different ethnic groups, the tribes that have kind of resettled, some of in the north. So if you were going to northern Thailand, you would absolutely go to Chiang Mai, and you might even go a little bit further to Chiang Rai, and that's where you might have the opportunity to go stay with an indigenous tribe. But of course, as you saw in the movie, she was a Muay Thai champion, and she retired from boxing and underwent her sexual reassignment surgery in 1999. You can see she's a very beautiful woman. She was a model at one point and an actress at one point. Since then, she's had a few exhibition fights, but really not a lot. Her primary focus has been that she taught and ran a boxing camp in an area called Pranbury. So she's moved on to kind of a very different type of life where she's now coaching others and teaching others in her boxing camp as opposed to doing a lot of fighting herself. Let's talk a little bit about sexual reassignment surgery, because Thailand does more of these surgeries than any other country. It really is a destination for people that are seeking sexual reassignment surgery. Generally, it's considered to be the definitive treatment for what they refer to as gender identity disorder. Gender identity disorder is when patients have anxiety, depression, and gender confusion. You heard the line in the movie, the body will be more in line with the soul. So that's a really spiritual way of thinking about gender reassignment surgery. So that came from the movie, the body will be more in line with the soul. Interestingly, the cost of surgery is very economical in Thailand. Again, that's why it's a destination. Here are some prices that I pulled. Now, these are a few years old. It doesn't really matter, but this would give you some idea of the price differential. If you were seeking this kind of surgery, and this was probably when I pulled this data, more like 2016. So the prices will be a little bit different now. But in the United States, you'd be paying $20,000 to $25,000. And again, keep in mind now in our current dollar, it would be even more. A little bit cheaper is what I found in the United Kingdom, $16,000. So the United States is a little more than going to the United Kingdom. But look at the price differential with Thailand, $5,500 in Thailand. Now, it is important to understand that just like anywhere else, you're going to have a range of facilities. And if you watch documentaries about this in Thailand, there are, kind of shady people doing procedures in maybe not the safest conditions. all the way up to very, very well supervised clinics and hospitals that are doing this. So obviously, price is one reason that Thailand is a sought out destination for this type of procedure. They've really created some expertise. And so you could find highly skilled doctors who do a lot of these surgeries. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the Katoi population. In Thailand, the most common transgender like category is what they refer to as Katoi. And you're probably going to hear that phrase, Katoi, or that word. A Katoi is an individual who is born biologically male, but who may take on female gender identity. So the transgender, a male choosing to present as a female. And that's what they would refer to as. The colloquial English translation of Katoi is ladyboy. And they're going to use that term as well. You're going to hear Thais referred to as ladyboys. You may even have individuals refer to themselves as ladyboys. If we pay attention, we're going to see Katoi individuals because in Thailand, they're quite visible. It doesn't have quite the same level of stigma as it does in other places. We'll talk more about that. But because they feel more safe, they are more present. And so if we pay attention, we look around, we're going to see individuals who are Katoi. I will tell you that I've met several Katoi women in Thailand, and some of them are just absolutely stunning. So here are pictures of Katoi women. And so, of course, they're transgender. These are absolutely beautiful women, and I think anyone would agree with that. And there are actually beauty pageants. This is Miss Tiffany's Universe pageant. These are the finalists of that pageant. This is a pageant for transgenders. These are transgender women. These are Katois. Again, absolutely beautiful. You will see women that are Katoi and not have any indication of it. And some of the most beautiful women that I've met have been Katoi in Thailand. The term ladyboy is not really that derogatory. I mean, it kind of is and it isn't, but it's commonly used all over Thailand. So I want to be really clear that you're going to hear people refer to ladyboys. I've met Katois that refer to themselves as ladyboys. And so it's not quite as derogatory as other words might be, but we should be careful, right? It's one thing for them to call themselves a ladyboy. We probably don't want to use the term to refer to anyone. If you meet somebody or you're questioning, you might ask if somebody is Katoi, probably better than asking if they're a ladyboy. One thing that's interesting is that the Katoi community really has support through Buddhist teachings, because Buddhist teachings really focus on the idea of equality, that men and women have the same brain. That's kind of a foundation of Buddhist teaching. And therefore, it's thought that even though they're physically different, they are one person. They have the same brain. And for this reason, Buddhist teachings don't point to rules concerning homosexuality. There is not language in the rules that talk about, it's a sin to be homosexual. This really is absent in the rules. So Buddhism is very silent on this issue. And because of this, it helps transgender people in the movement gain more acceptance. So if it's not discriminated against in Buddhism, if it's not outrightly referred to as being a bad thing or an immoral thing, then clearly that is good for the transgender movement, since this is a country that, as you've learned, is 95% Buddhist. Luckily for Thais who are Katoi, safety is not as much of a concern as it might be in some other nations. It's not dangerous for a Katoi to walk down the street, and being obviously Katoi, and they generally don't have to fear assault. It's a reasonably safe place to be Katoi on a daily basis, but it's not as generally accepted in the professional world. So while kind of it's more socially acceptable in Thailand than maybe it is in other countries, seems definitely more so than in the United States, we know there's businesses that still discriminate. There are popular Thai singers and Thai models who are Katoi. So again, there are people whose status is really elevated, and they also happen to be Katoi. Again, another sign that this is a situation that's more accepted in Thai culture. There are famous sports teams comprised solely of Katoi individuals, but there's also things that maybe portray them very differently. For example, there's ladyboy shows in Bangkok, that's what they call them, and they're major tourist attractions. The locals aren't going to ladyboy shows. This would be something that they're doing to earn money from tourists who want to have that experience. So, similar to going to a drag show in the United States. And I've actually been to one once, and it was fun, it was interesting. But then you have to think, well, does this help promote acceptance of the Katoi population in the community? Maybe not. Unfortunately, some Katois have to resort to working in the sex trade. So we do know that there are Katois that are serving as prostitutes. And again, there probably are tourists, sex tourists, that seek them out, right? Remember that Southeast Asia is still a sex tourism destination. The sex trade is still pretty big in Thailand. And if somebody wanted to have this kind of unique experience, they would be able to do so. Unfortunately, there's no direct anti discrimination language in Thailand's constitution. So, what we mean is that there's nothing that says, look, illegal to discriminate. More recently, some very vague language has been added. All right, maybe that's a step in the right direction, but to this day, it doesn't appear that they have added any strongly worded or very precisely worded language that says you cannot discriminate on the basis of this third gender. This means that discrimination in employment is a problem. It is rampant. Again, if you're not a legally protected group, you might not be able to discriminate against people on the basis of gender or race, but there's nothing that says you cannot discriminate against Katoi job candidates. And so while the Katoi population is reasonably accepted in Thai society, it can be harder for them to get good jobs. There are some places that we do see them working, but if you were trying to get a really good job, maybe as an executive assistant or in a managerial type position, or the kinds of jobs that you guys might want to have after graduating with a degree from Longwood University, those kinds of jobs might be more challenging for a Katoi to obtain. Katois do have success in traditional female-dominated jobs in Thailand. So let's think about what those traditional female-dominated jobs might be: working in beauty shops, in massage parlors, and restaurants, for example. And in fact, if I think back to the Katois that I've met in Thailand, that's where we've met them. But again, keep in mind, since they're not a legally protected group, there's no recourse if they are discriminated against. Again, if you think you were the best job candidate for a position and you don't get the position, there's really nothing you can do about it. If the employer doesn't want to hire you because you are Katoi, that is within their discretion. However, we're seeing that some companies are starting to show a bit of a more open mind, and we've seen some interesting examples. PC Air made the news, and this was back in 2012, because they took a stand and hired transgender flight attendants. And this is something that wouldn't have been done very regularly. But what they said, if you read articles about this, that they had such strong candidates, strong applications from transgender applicants, that they decided to hire some. And so they hired these 4 women right here. And so this became a big headline, and you can see this talked about over and over again if you do any research on this happening in 2012. Let's move on to talk about legal issues related to Katois. We've already kind of addressed that with the idea that they're not legally protected in the Constitution at this point. Again, because they're not legally recognized as women. You can discriminate against them, and if you are Katoi, you're not going to be legally considered a woman. And that's even if you've had gender reassignment surgery. So you could have undertaken sexual reassignment surgery to become more anatomically female, and that does not change how Thai's legal situation is going to apply for you. You are still a man. So that means if you got convicted of a crime and you're Katoy, you would go to a male prison, right? But we're having that same conversation in the United States, right? What would you do with a transgender woman in terms of what prison that they would go to? So the conversation's not that different. In Thailand, if you're Katoy, your ID card is still going to indicate your sex at birth. So if you're Katoy, you were male at birth, but you present as female, and again, you might have had sexual reassignment surgery, your ID cards are still going to indicate that you are male. In other words, your sex cannot be changed legally in Thailand. So without a way to legally change your sex in Thailand, that means you are not legally recognized as a woman, even though you are presenting as a woman, even though you've had surgery to be more anatomically correct for a woman. There is also no hate crime designation in Thailand. In other words, if there are crimes targeting gays, transgenders, not just Katoy, which would refer to males to females, but if it's in the other direction, still there are no hate crime designations. That means you don't get treated differently if you're the victim of a crime that really is a hate crime because somebody is targeting gays or somebody is targeting transgender individuals. You're also not protected by Thai laws relating to rape, and this is really disturbing. What I'm saying is that you're not going to be treated in the same way that a biological woman would be. So if you're Katoy presenting as a female, those Thai laws don't protect you in the same way as if you were a biological woman, because you're technically, again, according to Thai law, a man. If you're technically a man, the law doesn't perceive this as being rape in the same sense. So that's really disturbing. A toy woman could be the victim of rape, and her assailant is not going to have punishment the same way he would if she was violent. I would love to see this get changed at some point. The good news is that we've seen some progress, albeit limited. In 2002, the Department of Mental Health, and this is after getting intense pressure from the gay community. So what did they do? They removed homosexuality from its list of mental disorders. So guys, up until 2002 in Thailand, if you were gay, you were considered to have a mental disorder, if you can imagine. Now, 3 years later, and I'm not really quite sure why there was such a lag here, but in 2005, 3 years after this, the Thai military announced that it would discontinue its practice of dismissing transsexual and gay recruits. So before 2005, if you were transsexual or gay, you would be removed from the military. You wouldn't be accepted into the military. And again, what was the logic? Because you had a severe mental disorder, guys. This is language that I have pulled. This is their language. This is progress, right? Certainly, we don't want to be thinking about homosexuality as a mental disorder. We now don't want to be removing people from the military and certainly calling it a severe mental disorder. And again, the United States has had some of these same conversations and seen progress in the same kind of way, right? In March of 2008, the military went one step further. It actually added a third category for transsexual individuals. Again, more progress there. Now, in 2014, there was a bill on same-sex marriage, and it looked like this was going to get passed. It had bipartisan support, so it looked like there would be progress here. But interestingly, it stalled due to political issues. It just kind of never got the air beneath its wings to get moving. But it looked like there was going to be a real turn of events in 2014. Then we get to 2015 and we start seeing some really exciting things, that the new constitution would recognize a third gender. Now, think about what that means. We're not saying that if you are a Katoi, you are legally considered to be a woman, but now there's a third gender category. So, what does that mean? It means that you don't have to identify as male or female. So, instead, we have this third category, kind of an other category. And there are lots of headlines that talked about this. Other Asian countries have actually done this. For example, India and Pakistan and Nepal have actually added to their constitution language that recognizes a third gender, where you don't have to identify as male or female. And if this were to happen, it would decrease discrimination. And, of course, Katois would have a legal recourse when they find themselves being shut out of those best jobs, those ones that aren't female dominated. They might be able to break out of the traditional female roles in the beauty salons and the restaurants. I pulled some headlines back from 2015. This is Reuters. Look at the headline: Thailand to recognize third gender in new constitution. Found another one from CNN. Thailand's new constitution could soon recognize third gender. This is from The Advocate. Thailand touts accepting society and establishing third gender in constitution. But what's interesting is something must have happened, and I can't get to the bottom of it because we're still seeing conversations about needing to recognize a third gender in Thailand. So what that tells me is this didn't happen. I just don't see any evidence of legal changes that have been made along this line. And so as I'm recording this in May 2023, I don't see anything that suggests that the 2015 Constitution actually did this. I also can't find any discussion of what happened and why it didn't. In 2015, it really did look like Thailand was on its way to being the first nation to make these changes. If they had followed through with this, they would have been the first nation to make these changes. But I don't think it happened. So they would have been the first country to recognize the third gender. But as I said, I can't find any evidence that this took place. Just to be certain, I tried to find some information about which countries actually do recognize a third gender. And this is on passports. If Thailand recognized a third gender on their passports, then they would be on this list. So this is from Newsweek, and notice it's from 2021. I haven't been able to find anything more recent, but it says at least 15 countries have already allowed people to amend their gender to a legalized non-binary or third gender identifier on their passports. And this includes Argentina, Austria, Australia, Canada, Colombia, Denmark, Germany, Iceland, Ireland, Malta, the Netherlands, New Zealand, India, and Nepal. I'm not going to expect you to memorize that list. Perhaps know the ones that are in Asia. But who's not on this list? Thailand, right? We have an interesting situation. Thailand's society is more accepting of the transgender culture, but their laws haven't caught up with it. We haven't seen a lot of movement. People are still trying to fight to be legally recognized, to have some kind of legal protection, but I can't find any as of right now in middle of 2023. Time will tell. Maybe we'll see progress on this front in the next few years. If you have any questions, guys, please let me know. Otherwise, have a great day, and thanks so much for listening.